Salem, Massachusetts, a small town with a peaceful exterior. But anyone who has lived here for long enough knows that it carries a dark past buried beneath its modern veneer. I have lived here for 3 years in a historic neighborhood with cobblestone streets. During the day, everything seems calm, but as night falls, an eerie silence blankets the town, and the secrets in the dark seem to rise again. When Evelyn moved in next to me, I didn't think much of it. She was a friendly woman, always smiling at everyone and often baking treats to share with the neighbors. She was the kind of person you would trust without hesitation. She worked at the town library, a place full of the strange tales of Salem. But then something began to change. One night, I heard a strange sound. It was a soft scratching, as if someone was scraping the window. I thought it was just an animal in the yard, but the sound repeated itself. It made me feel uneasy, as though there was a presence outside my door. I opened the window and looked outside, but saw nothing. Just darkness. Only a terrifying silence. The next day, I didn't say anything to Evelyn, but the feeling of unease lingered. She went about her usual routine, watering plants, greeting people as they came and went from the neighborhood, always with a gentle smile. But there was something different in her eyes. Her eyes were brighter, colder, as if hiding a dark secret that I could not fathom. Things seemed to return to normal until that Friday night. That night, when I was sitting in the living room, reading an old book I had found at the library, I heard the scratching sound again, louder this time. It was as if someone was trying to scratch at the window of my house, but this time it wasn't an animal. The feeling was different. It felt like someone was watching me, waiting for me to react. I stood up and walked to the window, but when I looked outside, there was nothing. The dark night stretched out, and no one appeared except for the shadows of the trees swaying in the wind. Yet, when I turned back, I saw Evelyn standing at the end of the street by the lamppost. She was standing there, her eyes glowing red like fire, the light from the street lamp illuminating her face, making it appear more grotesque than ever. At that moment, I couldn't take my eyes off her. A cold chill rose within me. Something was wrong, but I couldn't stop looking. She stood there as if waiting for something that didn't belong in this world. The moment I saw that look in her eyes, I quickly shut the window and drew the curtain. My heart pounded, not because I was afraid of her, but because it felt like I had touched a secret that I couldn't understand. I decided I had to do something to face the growing fear inside me. I went straight to the library, where I knew Sarah would still be working at this hour. She was the only person I trusted. Sarah had lived in Salem all her life and knew all the strange stories of this town. When I arrived at the library, she was sitting in her usual corner reading an old book. "Sarah, I need help," I said, sitting at her table. "Do you know anything about the strange stories in Salem?" Sarah looked up at me, her gaze filled with worry. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice gentle but tinged with concern. I told her everything that had been happening in the past few days, the strange things about Evelyn, the odd occurrences, and the feelings I couldn't explain whenever night fell. Sarah was silent for a moment. Then she quietly said, "Salem is not a normal place, and you know that. The things you're feeling are no coincidence. This town holds an ancient darkness, mysteries that still linger from the witch trials." "Which mysteries?" I asked. my worry rising. Sarah pulled out an old book from a drawer and opened it to show me. Stories about curses and the return of tormented souls, people who died but couldn't rest. What you're going through might be linked to something very old, something that people have tried to bury. She pointed to a passage in the book. This is a legend from long ago about a woman who was accused of witchcraft during the first witch hunts in Salem. After she was executed, her soul couldn't rest and returned every night, taking the souls of the unfortunate. What? I gasped. Are you saying that Evelyn could be part of that curse? Sarah nodded. It's possible. The souls trapped in this town cannot rest unless they take revenge. What you're witnessing might be the awakening of an ancient curse. I left the library feeling more anxious than ever. Sarah's story only deepened my doubts about what I had witnessed. I couldn't stay silent any longer. I couldn't let this town fall into the grip of the evil that had existed for centuries. That night, I couldn't sleep. Despite preparing carefully with salt, candles, and protective charms around the house, the feeling of unease never left. Every little noise in the night startled me, from the rustling wind outside the window to the clinking of objects in the house. But there was one sound I couldn't forget, the whistle, soft, persistent, and always arriving at 3 a.m. The whistle lingered in my mind, like a warning that not only Evelyn but other things I couldn't fully understand were coming. How could I not have realized the truth sooner? How could I let myself be consumed by fear like this? What should I do next? The silence in the house was broken only when a gust of wind suddenly blew open my window. A wave of cold rushed into the room, as if a chill from another world was creeping through every wall, straight into my heart. I jumped up, rushing to the window to close it, but before I could do anything, I saw Evelyn standing in the darkness, just outside my window. She wasn't human anymore. Not only were her eyes glowing red, but a strange light emanated from her body, making it impossible for me to look away. In that brief moment, I felt a wave of cold sweep through my entire body, as if she was no longer human, but a being from another realm. Suddenly, Evelyn looked directly at me and smiled. That smile was not the one I had seen before. It was a cruel smile filled with torment, with a longing that could never be satisfied. At that moment, I realized that I could no longer wait. I had to do something immediately. I decided to go to Blackwood Creek, the place Sarah had told me about, where the curse and the souls that couldn't rest began. That night, I drove alone through the dark, empty roads to Blackwood Creek. The scenery along the way was desolate, with no one in sight. I felt like I was entering a strange land, a place that didn't belong to this world. The deeper I drove, the heavier and colder the air became. The sense of tension and fear overwhelmed my body, and I could feel something watching me. When I reached the edge of the forest, a faint light appeared from afar, illuminating part of the dark forest. My steps became slower, and I tried to control my fear. It felt like someone was following me, quietly walking behind me, but I dared not look back. After crossing a few small streams and slippery rocks, I stood before a large stone where I knew the curse of Blackwood Creek began. I sat down quietly, thinking about everything that had happened. Could Evelyn really be trapped in the cycle of an ancient curse, or had she chosen this path for herself? Those thoughts were hard to answer, but I knew one thing for sure. I had to continue this journey, not just to free Evelyn, but to protect Salem from the domination of darkness. The ground beneath me began to gently shake. A sudden cold wind blew through, causing the nearby tree branches to shake violently. A feeling I couldn't explain rose within me, as if an invisible force was slowly pulling me down, dragging me into the dark past. The more I thought about it, the more tense I became. Something had happened in this forest, in this air, and it still haunted us to this day. As I was trying to breathe deeply to regain my composure, a soft laugh echoed through the darkness. It wasn't Evelyn's laugh, but it had a strange tone, as if someone had been watching me from afar, from the shadows. "You've come to the right place," a low, hoarse voice said from behind me. My whole body froze, and I dared not turn around. It was then I realized I was not alone in this forest. Who was it? The question raced through my mind like a great wave. Was it one of the ancient souls from Blackwood Creek, or someone who had come to test me? Either way, I couldn't just ignore what was happening. My body trembled, and I couldn't suppress the rising fear. But I decided to face it at least once. Somehow, I found the courage to turn around. The sight before me was unbelievable. A man stood there, dressed in old black clothes, his face weary and full of sorrow. His eyes were darkened, looking deep into mine with an understanding of the fear I was experiencing. "You shouldn't be here," he said, taking a step closer, his eyes filled with regret. "This is the land of the ghosts, where they never leave." I tried to keep my calm, but his words made my fear flare up. "I have to be here," I said, my voice trembling. "I need to know about Evelyn. Who is she? Is she part of this curse?" He stared at me for a moment before sighing. He pulled out a thick book from his coat and opened it to show me something that seemed to relate to everything happening in Salem. "The curse is not something you can just break with a silver knife and a few charms," he said. "What you're facing is a spirit that's been bound in darkness for centuries." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. A spirit? Isn't she human? He shrugged, his eyes heavy with something I couldn't quite understand. "Humans, monsters, or spirits, those things don't matter anymore. What you're seeing is just the image of what happened, of what died, but never truly left." I couldn't find words. Everything inside me collapsed. The curse I had thought was just a legend was real, and the creatures I was facing were not ordinary people losing control. They were souls trapped between this world and death. He stepped closer, his voice laced with a deep sadness. "You can't save her, and you can't save yourself if you keep pursuing this." The man stood before me, his expression contemplative, as if he had seen countless people walk the same path. His gaze held no fear, just exhaustion and deep sorrow. "This curse is not something easily broken," he continued, his voice firm but tinged with bitterness. "It will always return, because those souls can never rest. They will haunt until they take everything you love." "I can't leave," I said, my voice determined, even though my heart was racing. "I have to know how to end it." He looked at me for a long time, as if trying to gauge whether I truly understood the danger I was facing. "Then come with me. I'll show you what happened at Blackwood Creek." I couldn't refuse. A part of me was calling for me to understand, to not live in doubt and fear anymore. I followed him deeper into the forest, a place I had never dared to tread. The cold seemed to grow deeper with every step, as though I was walking into a forgotten land, untouched by time and memory. We passed through thick trees and stopped before a small lake, the water crystal clear but with an eerie greenish hue. We stood there for a while, no one speaking, only the sound of the wind whispering through the trees, as though they were murmuring something to each other. Finally, the man spoke, his voice even deeper now. "This is where the souls of those cursed are trapped. Blackwood Creek is not a place anyone should enter. Those like Evelyn, the ones cursed, will always return here, for it's the only place they feel alive." I stared at the water, where my reflection seemed distorted, blurry in the ripples. I couldn't understand everything he was saying, but I could feel the truth of it. Evelyn was not just a person infected by a curse. She was a soul caught in an endless loop, a curse that couldn't be broken. "How can I save her?" I asked, my voice trembling. He turned to me, his eyes clouded with sorrow. "Not all souls can be saved. Sometimes we have to let them go, so they don't drag more suffering to others." His words hit me like a slap. I couldn't imagine that happening to Evelyn, a friend, a neighbor I once trusted. She couldn't be part of that evil. She couldn't be. "Well then, what should I do?" I asked. "I can't just leave her like this." The man sighed again, shaking his head. "There's only one way. The key to ending this curse is right in your hands, but you'll have to pay the price for it." He reached into his cloak and pulled out a silver ring, worn and weathered by time, shaped like a bird with outstretched wings. He placed it on the table in front of me, his hands trembling slightly. "This ring is the key to freeing Evelyn, but it's not an easy solution," he said, his voice low and filled with worry. "It has been used by my family, the ones who fought against Salem's curse for years. But each time it's used, there's a cost to be paid, and not everyone can survive the journey it takes." I stared at the ring, my heart full of doubt. How could something so small hold the key to freeing a soul trapped in an eternal curse? "What do you want me to do with this ring?" I asked, my voice trembling with unease. The man looked at me, his eyes heavy with something unspoken. "You can only free her if you have the courage to face the darkness inside of yourself. You can only save her if you confront the evil that has possessed her. But when you do, you will face the evil within yourself, and you might not survive the encounter." The coldness in my body intensified as I picked up the ring. It felt heavier than I imagined. This was not just a token of hope, it was a burden, and I had no choice but to carry it. "I will do whatever it takes to save her," I said, my voice firm despite my fear. With the ring in my hand, I returned home, my heart heavy with worry, but also with a strange sense of resolve. That night, as darkness fell over Salem, the whistle came again. This time, I was no longer afraid. Fear had slipped away, replaced by an unshakable resolve. I stepped outside, the silver ring gleaming on my hand, my mind focused on the only goal: to save Evelyn. As I walked down the street toward her house, I felt the air shift around me. There was a presence following me, like the ghosts of Salem, watching every step I took. The familiar streets seemed strange now, unfamiliar in their darkened form. Evelyn appeared before me, but she was not the same as before. She stood in the eerie glow of a street lamp, her eyes glowing red, her face no longer the one I had known. Instead, it was the face of a creature, twisted and corrupted, consumed by the darkness. "Why are you here?" Evelyn said, her voice deep and filled with malice. She was no longer the friendly neighbor I had once trusted. She was something else now, a creature consumed by torment. "I'm here to save you," I said, my voice steady despite my rising fear. "You're not a monster. You're not this." She laughed, a low, cruel laugh, full of suffering and longing. "No one can save me. I have been bound to this curse for far too long, and you too will be like me." She stepped forward, and the shadowy creatures surrounding her began to move, their presence ominous and threatening. The darkness around her felt suffocating, but I refused to give in. I tightened my grip on the ring, its glow intensifying as I faced Evelyn. "Evelyn, I can't let you stay like this," I said, my voice unwavering. "You can fight back against this curse. You can be free." She sneered, her eyes burning with hatred. "You think you can defeat it?" She spat, her voice mocking. "It's a part of me now. It always will be." I could feel the weight of the battle ahead of me, but this time I wasn't afraid. I was ready to face the darkness, both the one inside Evelyn and the one within myself. With a deep breath, I lifted the silver ring high above my head, letting its light shine through the darkness. The energy in the air shifted, growing stronger, more focused. The creatures surrounding Evelyn recoiled, their forms trembling in the presence of the light. But Evelyn didn't back down. Her eyes burned brighter, her form growing more twisted as the darkness fought back against the light. "You think you can defeat me?" She sneered again. "You'll never win." But I wasn't about to give up. With all the strength I had, I called out the ancient chant Sarah had taught me, the one that had the power to break curses. A powerful surge of light erupted from the ring, shining with such intensity that the darkness recoiled in terror. For a moment, everything stood still. The air was heavy with anticipation. And then, the first sign of victory came. The shadows that surrounded Evelyn began to fade, their forms dissolving into the light. Evelyn's face twisted in pain, and for the first time, she seemed to falter. "No," she whispered, her voice full of desperation. "No, I can't." With one final surge of energy, the light from the ring expanded, enveloping Evelyn completely. The darkness that had consumed her began to disintegrate, and for a brief moment, I saw the person she had once been, the human soul trapped for so long, finally freed from its torment. As the last remnants of darkness vanished, Evelyn collapsed to her knees, her face filled with exhaustion, but also relief. The red glow in her eyes faded, and for the first time in a long while, she was free. "We did it," I whispered, my voice shaking. Evelyn looked up at me, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "Thank you for saving me." And as I stood there, watching the light of dawn break through the darkness, I knew that we had not only saved her, but also Salem, from the curse that had haunted it for centuries. The battle was over, and for the first time in a long,